Okay, hello, and I need this in your site. There you go. All right, Baruch Hashem. Welcome to the Parsha class, Parsha Bo 5785. Bo is spelled Bet, Aleph, 2 and 1. Add those together, you get 3. You're welcome. No, the significance is that the Parsha has the last 3, count them 3, of the 10 plagues. Yeah, the first 7 in last week's Parsha. We continue with the 3 in this week's Parsha. We're not going to talk too much about the plagues. We'll save that for Pesach. But we will say at least one thing on the first of the plagues in this week's Parsha, and that's locusts, arbe. We'll let's share the source sheet, so you have something to look at besides this handsome mug. And there we go. Baruch Hashem. So we start with the very towards the very beginning of the parsha. Moshe and Aaron come and warn Paro. He ignores them. They turn around. His servants ask them to come back. They come back, and well, that's the next thing you know. Next thing you know, they are warned about the locust swarm, and the pasuk tells us that's chapter 10, verse 14, Yud Daled. Yal ha'arbe al kol eretz Mitzrayim. The arbe covered the entire, attacked all of the land of Mitzrayim. V'yanach b'chol gvul Mitzrayim, and they settled. They made camp. These locusts made camp everywhere they could in Mitzrayim. Kaved me'od, it was very heavy. Lefanav lo hayachein arba kamohu bi'acharav lo yekein. Never before had there ever been locusts like these, and never again will there be locusts like these. Beautiful. Never was, never will be. Like the old, if you recall in the 80s, the old 7-Up commercials, right? No caffeine, never had it, never will. Right? Anyways, so this is similar. These locusts, Egypt never had them and never will. Very unique locusts. How unique are they? So that's why we need commentaries. Says the Ramban. What does it mean that they never will be locusts like these? It says Hakatuv Mudia Otanu Miderech Hanavua She'achrav Lo Yekein. In the future, there will never be there. In the future, there will never be a locust swarm like this. The Katav Rashi, and Rashi writes, "V'tashaya b'mei Yoel shene'amar bo kamohu lo yeh niyah min ha'olam." That you might say, if you know your Tanakh very well, and know that there's a book called Yoel, or Joel, in the Treasar, in the end of Ketuvim, in the end of Nevi'im, you'll know that there was a locust swarm in chapter 2. And Rashi points out, you might say, if you knew that, that there were locust swarms like this before or after. The pasuk here says there wouldn't be again. Lamdenu shaya gadol Mishel Moshe. We learn from here that it was even greater than the plague of Moshe. Oto shel yol haya al yedei minim harbe shayu biyachad arbe v'chasil yelek v'gezem. Over in the time of Yoel, there were different kinds of arbe, different kinds of locusts. The arbe, chasil, yelek, gazam, all the 4 different kinds of locusts were included. It wasn't just one species of locust like in the time of Moshe. Aval shal Moshe min echad. In the time of Moshe, there was only one. Kamocha lo haya lo yeh. Never will there be, never was there before, never will there be in the future a unified, I don't know if unified is the right word, a locust swarm of one type of locust. Yeah, that's Rashi's answer to why it can be that the time of Yoel was even worse. At the same time, does not contradict this verse, which it seems to imply that never will there be again with this uniquely one species unispecial infestation of locusts. The Ramban does not like this. It shouldn't surprise us. Ramban often has questions on Rashi, and this is one of them. He says, "V'kasha alai." I have a problem with this. It's difficult for me, Ma'amar Harav, what the rabbi wrote. In other words, what Rashi wrote. Sharei Katuv, it says in the verse in Tehillim, V'yitein v'chasil yivulam yigiyam la'arbe. He gave over to these crops to the chasil and their work to arbe, which implies ksiv v'kativ amar v'yavo arbe v'yelek v'ein mispar. And then Tehillim elsewhere it says regarding talking about this locust swarm of Mitzrayim that he commanded, that's what Moshe commanded, and the Arbe Yelek without number came. So Arbe and Yelek, right? So it sounds like there's more than just one species of locusts in the time of Moshe. So how would Rashi answer that? So maybe, says Ramban, Ulai Yom Harav Shaya Min Ha'arbe Shel Moshe Gadol Mishel Yoel. It could be that he would say that the species of Arbe in the time of Moshe was still more than than all those different kinds of species in the time of Yoel. But the other types of species in the time of Yoel was more than Moshe's locust swarm altogether. But really, he says when it comes down to it, I don't like this answer at all. These words are pointless. Aval b'chol gvul Mitzrayim nishbach, the words, the entire border of Egypt, which was mentioned earlier in the pasuk, they are connected. And what the verse really means, lefanav lo haya kein arbe bo kamochu v'acharav lo haya kein sham. It was never a swarm like this in any border, and after there will not be any equal in the borders of Mitzrayim. So what's so special about this locust swarm in Mitzrayim? So it says v'taken ki ba'avur hayot eretz Mitzrayim lacha ma'od b'yor. It's possible to say, since the whole land of Egypt, Mitzrayim, is well has a good source of moisture and water because of the Nile River. Lo hayasham arba gadol, great big swarms of these locusts don't usually occur. They usually need dry, arid conditions. Ki darko lavo lishnei yetzirat hamatar chasher hu muska b'yol. It's usually they come during times of drought, as by the way it happens in Yoel. And he now quotes the Rabbeinu Hananel, who apparently had a commentary on the Torah, which we unfortunately no longer have. But he has a famous, Rabbeinu Hananel is famous for he's on every page of Gemara. There's a lot to say there. He's an early commentary on the Gemara. K'tav Rabbeinu Hananel b'perusha v'haTorah shelo me'ed atarat Moshe Rabbeinu v'ad achshav ein arbe mafsid b'chol gvul Mitzrayim. The time of from the time of Moshe's atara, in other words, his prayer to stop these locusts, until today, Rabbeinu Hananel's time, there has never been in all of the history of Egypt a locust swarm like that. The im yipol haaretz Yisrael the avo the yikanes b'gvul Mitzrayim, einu ochel mikol yachol haaretz klum ad achshav. And even if there's a locust swarm in Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land, and it goes towards the border of Egypt, it won't eat any of the crops of Egypt. In other words, Egypt has become, ever since Moshe's prayer, immune to locusts. All the way up to today, says Rabbeinu Hananel, okay, a little over 1,000 years ago, right? Ve'omrim ki zeh davar yedua hu l'chol lako. People say that this is like a well-known thing. This is like something people talk about in their free time. Bo yire ki tzefardim amar rak be'or tisharna. If you look at the verses, you see that when it comes to the Sephardim, the frogs, according to most commentators, frogs. Let's be real here. It said they're going to only remain in the river. Lefichach nishar alitimtzar ad achshav, and again, so Tzfardim, according to the Ramban, are crocodiles. So they're covered. The Nile is filled with crocodiles until today, because the verse says that they're going to stay in the river. So here they are, they're staying in the river. Of all Ha'arbek, I guess Rabbi Hananel agreed that it was crocodiles. Of all Ba'arbek, I think we mentioned in previous years, by the way, that Rav Hirsch does not like the translation of Sephardim as crocodiles. He says if there were that many crocodiles, as the Midrash says that there were Sephardim, then the Egyptians wouldn't be able to survive. Unless they were like not hungry crocodiles. Anyway, whatever it is, they could have been commanded not to eat. Who knows? Just trying to make shalom here. But with again with the locusts, what was Moshe's prayer? That they shouldn't stay at all. And not only did they not stay at all, there are no locust swarms that attack and affect Egypt in any way. And right up, and that right there, Ad Khan, Lashon Harav. That's a quote from Rabbeinu Hananel. Says the Ramban, Vidati b'pshat hakatuv, and my interpretation of the pashut pshat, the simple explanation, is ki bavur shemakat ha'arba regila lavo pamim b'chol hadorot. Locust swarms come to in all generations. They happen. It's a historical fact. Sometimes grasshoppers, locusts, they eat up vegetation. It's a normal thing. V'od sheba zot kederech hamakarim ki ruach hakadim nasu. And not only that, but everything happened in the derech mikra, a normal, natural manner, right? The Jewish the plagues were brought in by an east wind. It talks about in the verse. And the Torah is telling us that everything else was natural. It's the amount that's unnatural. It's a huge amount. There's never going to be, in any natural way, this amount of locusts. Not only that, uvigadlo yadu ki makat helokim hu. And this way, because of this great amount, because of literally the quantity of these locusts, not the quality of the plague, as Rashi implies and Rabbeinu Hananel implies, but the sheer quantity of these locusts, that what's never going to happen again, never was, never will be. She'ein regilut lavo kain be'echad hazmanim. Never happened. That doesn't usually happen. V'gam oto shel Yoel maka me'et Elokim. And so, what about the plague of Yoel? That's also from Hashem. It says that's what it says in the verses. So it's not a contradiction to say that Yoel's plague was better or worse qualitatively than Moshe's. The point is that Moshe's plague, there just was a lot of locusts, a huge amount that was apparently memorable and still talked about in the days of Rabbeinu Hananel, several thousand years after the occurrence, almost 2,000 years after it happened. So it left quite an imprint, these locusts, and that's why right, and that's why it's worthy of mention in the Torah the way that it is. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Let's go on from there to a verse that needs a lot of interpretation. So much so that we're going to see three different ways to read this verse. Three different ways to understand why it is that the Jewish people had to ask for what they had to ask for. Now, we've talked about this before. Happens to be this is a verse we've talked about in previous years with other commentaries. This year, God willing, though, we'll see it through the eyes and ears, I guess, of the Oznaim LaTorah. We'll start with him, and then we'll move our way in different directions. So, says Hashem to Moshe, chapter 11, verse 2. The Ber Naba Aznei Ha'am, speak now in the ears of the people. Vishalu ish me'et re'ehu, and have each man ask his fellow. V'isha me'et re'uta, and each woman ask her, I don't know how you say fellow for a woman. Klei chesav u'klei zahav, gold and silver objects. In order, it would be silver and gold objects. And we've spoken about in the past the fact that usually when Moshe is commanded to do something, there's no, there's no please. So why is Hashem saying, please speak? I beg you, Hashem, speaking to Moshe, is begging him to speak to the people to do this. So it seems like the people will be reluctant to do it, I guess. And so that's what the commentaries that we'll be dealing with today, I'll have something to say about this topic. Daberna ein na ela lashon bakasha, says there's Naim LaTorah. The word na is always a request, please, right? And he quotes this from the Gemara in Brachot, right? Bakasha zu lama, and why does Hashem have to ask here? Dim hayu bnei Yisrael az moasim b'kesav v'zahav. Do the people not want gold and silver? Do they think it's disgusting? They have to be asked to get it. That's silver and gold. It's yours. Take it. Now, please take it. What's it to please? And again, we're going to have several interpretations of this, but let's start with those Naim LaTorah, who says very brilliantly, learning from history. וגם הטעם כדי שלא אמר אותו צדיק אין המובן כי אין הקדוש ברוך הוא רוצה לקיים. Okay, so he goes on to say the Gemara tells us that that Hashem wanted that tzaddik, referring to Avraham, he wanted that tzaddik to not be upset with him. Right, because he promised Avraham that the Jewish people would leave with great wealth, and if they don't do this, then Avraham is going to be cheated. Like you told me, my children are going to be slaves, and they were slaves, but now they're coming out. They're not as wealthy as you said they would be. What's the deal? You lied to me. I said a bracha earlier. So, Davar Zeh Nish'al Hachamim V'lo Pirushuhu. This is a question that the sages have asked, and they don't really have an answer, and we haven't had an answer Ad Shepirshu Hazman Hazeh, until we saw what happened now. What happened now? Shabo Alta Shalat Hashilomim Migermania Ha'arura Ba'ad Rechush Yisrael. The German government, the German reparations, are an attempt to sort of mollify their guilt for what they did in World War II, the Shoah, the Holocaust, by paying off the Jewish survivors. Right? Rutzchia shahargu yoter misheshet million of our Jewish brethren, B'nachei B'nai Yisrael, Yoshve Europa, who lived, settled in Europe, V'chasher Gavra Alehem Oivehem V'nitzachim, and then their enemies came and destroyed them. Alta Shalat Hashilishom L'Am Yisrael Ba'ad Rechusham. If the German government now wants to pay them off for what they did, and the big question, many say, Hayim Rotzchinu Hayu Im Yerushenu. Do we want this inheritance? B'ksat Toanim she'ein la'am Yisrael lavo abasim mikol makom im harishayim ha'elu. So the people don't want anything from these rishayim, from these evil people. Some people are taking it to get him back. Some people are not taking it. They don't want anything from these people. They don't want to have anything to do with them. So it's a big question. What's the right thing to do? Should we take it? Should we not take it? So says those nine Torah. That's why the Jewish people had to be convinced in the time of Yetziat Mitzrayim to take this rechush, to take this reward, to take this money, this gold and silver from the neighbors. Because some of them are saying, I don't want anything from them. I don't want to touch anything that smells of Egyptian. We've had enough from them. I don't want any more. I don't want anything from them. And we haven't Baruch Hashem, I guess we can say, we haven't really had that kind of feeling until recently. We can look back and say this is why they were reluctant. This is why they were reluctant. And if you're looking to me for an answer of what should be done, everybody, there's what to rely on both sides. There's reason to take it and do good things with it. Right? Give tzedakah, build communities. They do owe us. They did certainly owe us, and they paid, and they're a much better country than they once were. I understand, but there's still problems. And again, to be all proud and say I don't want their money, I don't want to have anything to do with them. There's room for that too. There's a sense of dignity. Speaking of victims of the Holocaust, Rav Teichtel, author of Im Habanim Smecha, has a commentary on the Torah called Mishnah Sachir, and in that commentary, he has another reason. By the way, he was a victim of the Holocaust. It was H-Shem Yinkom Damov. Hashem should avenge his blood. He also brings this same pasuk and the same idea. Why are we saying no? Why are we saying please? No is a language of bekasha, of asking. The Jewish people need to be asked to take this wealth. Completely different way to look at it. And that's what I like about, one of the things I like about learning Torah is you see so many different brilliant and correct lessons that can be learned from the wording. Here, we're spending a lot of time learning about the word nah, please. Why does the Torah have this extra word? Because there's nothing extra. We're learning things from it. Number one, we learned that there's reason to not want money from your oppressors. And reason number two, there might be a reason not to want money at all. What do I mean? So many people, many religions in the world eschew asceticism. They approve of asceticism. They eschew wealth. They think wealth is the root of all evil. Money is bad. Success, comfort. They want to be. They want to work as hard as possible. They don't want. They don't want to rest. They don't want. They don't want technology to help them. There's different kinds of religions with similar sort of ideas regarding the conflict of physicality and spirituality. Comes along Rav Teichtel and tells us the Torah is telling us that there is no problem. You can be the holiest person in the world, and you don't have to worry about the gashmiut, about the physicality. You can have a beautiful home, beautiful kiddush cup, uh, nice clothing, clean clothing. Everything can go well, and you can still be 100% spiritual, as long as you know what the root of that money is. As long as you know that money came from something and it's for something. You're using that money for mitzvot. The comfort in your home allows you to have more guests, for instance, to feed more poor people, for instance. That's all fine. If you're living in a life where your idea of cleanliness is making your home into a museum where nobody can touch anything, right? Then perhaps that's something to look at again. In terms of the Torah's perspective, says Rav Teichtel here, you're allowed to have some. He quotes the verse in Nehemiah that talks about Rosh Hashanah. The Jewish people were worried that Rosh Hashanah, the day of judgment. Let's be nervous. Let's be scared. No, says in Nehemiah. No, this is chapter 8, verse 9 in Nehemiah. Yisrael Rosh Hashanah. The Jewish people weren't eating. It was such a holy day. So kibochim kol ha'am. The people were crying. And so what did he say to them in verse 10? L'chu achlu, go and eat. So go eat, go drink, enjoy the day. It's a holy day. Holiness does not mean avoiding food and drink. Yes, there are days when we fast. That's not because those are the holiest days. We're holier people because we're not eating. No, our eating is holy. We bless the food. We have laws about our food, kashrut, humanitarian laws, ethics. A lot of things make it so that our eating experience is a holy experience. And that is why the Jewish people were concerned about taking from the gold and silver of the Egyptians. And so Hashem had to tell Moshe to use the word please, to beg the Jews. Don't be too frum to enjoy the gold and silver that you've earned. So now we have already two ideas. We have one idea of the gold and silver might have been blood money, and the Jews didn't want to have anything to do with it. And the other idea we have is that gold and silver are money, and money is the root of all evil, and can't lead to anything good. So that both of those are wrong ideas, and so Hashem had to speak to Moshe in a sort of in the form of a request that he speak to the Jewish people in the way that they will listen to him and make sure that Hashem's promise to Abraham comes true. Comes along the Ktav Sofer, and he's of course in between. No, he's earlier than he's our earliest source. We actually went backwards chronologically. Went from there's Naim the Torah, which is the most recent, to Rav Taiktal, Hashem Yinkum Damov. Now the Ktav Sofer. Ktav Sofer in Pressburg again quotes his Gemara in Brachot that we don't want to Hashem didn't want to upset the tzaddik, implying Avraham. So he quotes the Gemara, Vatmuya Meboeret, and it's difficult to explain. Kamim lo yomar ot tzaddik tzarich lakadosh baruch hu l'kayim b'mivtacho lo ish al yechazev. We needed Avraham to pressure Hashem to keep his word. Hashem has to keep his word because he doesn't want to upset the tzaddik. What? Hashem always keeps his word. Hashem is not a liar. What are we worried about here? One second. Apologize. I'm sorry. Yeah. So the Hashem has to be worried that the tzaddik is going to be upset. No, Hashem shouldn't want. We're not going to lie here. So what's going on? What kind of righteous? We're calling Avram a tzaddik. Why? Because he wants his descendants to come out rich. That's tzaddik. That's tzidkut. That's righteousness. That he wants. That he wants. He wants a little bit of money. He wants some gelt in his pockets. What's going on here? So he says, like this. What happened was that the Jewish people were given this money by the Egyptians as a loan. At least that's how the Egyptians viewed it, and they needed to do that because they needed to basically take it as a loan because the Egyptians would eventually chase after them to get it back in next week's parsha in Beshalach. And that's how this is all kind of set up, that the Egyptians are sort of like, they think that with the righteous indignation they're going to chase the Jews into the sea, right? But the fact is that hold on. And so because so all right, here we go. So Kamashi Katav Lo Amru Kulanu V'ayim Evan Ezra. He quotes the Evan Ezra. Kilo Natan Hashem Belev Paro L'shalcham k'dei lo yihu tzrichim lehasket tova l'Mitzrayim. Hashem did not want the Jewish people to feel indebted to the Jewish to the Mitzrayim. I'm sorry, so distracting. Um, right. So because they didn't want the Jewish people, Hashem did not want the Jewish people to take this as a matana, as a gift, so that they'd be thankful to the Egyptians, but to take it as a loan so that they would have to pay it back. And the Egyptians would chase after them. And then instead of having to pay it back, the Egyptians died, right? And then they were able to keep it. That was the whole plan. L'chein tziva Hashem sheishalu. That's why Hashem wanted them to ask. Ve'achar kach b'tviat hayam zachu min ha'hefker. And only after they died in the sea of reeds were they able to take these this gold and the silver behefker in an allowable way. Okay. So let's skip a little bit forward here. We get our first mitzvot as Jewish people in this week's parsha, and the first of these is the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, which God willing we'll be doing if it's clear out. We'll be doing the Rabbanan version of Kiddush Levana. Motzei Shabbat this week. So Chodesh Hazel Lachem Rosh Chodeshim Rishon Hu Lachem Lachadshei Hashana. We've spoken in previous years that the Chodesh, this Chodesh from the Rav Hirsch says is from the word Chidush, from renewal. This renewal is the beginning of renewals. It happens every month as the new moon, as it begins to wax, becomes a full moon halfway through the month, and then starts waning again, and it gets renewed and renewed every single month, same as the Jewish people, and it's a uniquely Jewish activity to mekadesh it, to make it holy. So asks Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, and I brought this in a previous year, but I don't think we spent enough time on this. He quotes the Ramban and the rabbis of the Yerushalmi Talmud that if we really care about this month business, right? The months are such a holy thing. Why in the world? Zeinin Amru Shemod Chadashim Elu Imanu Mi Bavel? Why are we using Babylonian names for these holy months? And by the way, these Babylonian names are usually avodah zarah related. They're related to the idolatry and idol worship. It's a very strange, puzzling fact that we do that. And in general, and this is why it's sort of a long piece. This is a long piece of the as you'll see of the Emet Eliyahu, but he asks a number of questions. He says, so first of all, why are the months Babylonian names? And furthermore, okay, so fine, Nisan Iyar, these are let's say these are Persian names, and it's used in Tanakh even. Hina yesh the Temua, and it's even more of a question. He says, "Madu be'emet azvu lashon haTorah niktu lashon paras." Why are we using the Persian language at all? Right? Ubefrad b'shem hadashim sheish behem shema avodah zara kigon Tammuz. Tammuz is an avodah zara, and maybe some other months are named after avodah zara. It's very strange. Emet matzinu shebimei bayit haita b'shefa hameduberet b'Yisrael loshon arami. It's another question. In the time of the Bayit Sheni, the Jewish people used the Aramaic language. And only the Torah was in Lashon HaKodesh. Some people are still like that. Many languages were developed and invented by the Jews in order to not speak the holy language. Yiddish, Ladino. And it's an interesting thing. Even in the time of the temple, we were speaking Aramaic. What's happening? Why are we doing that? He asks a number of questions on that same topic. He says, and he says like this. He says that the Venira Bezeh Shakti Mashi Yesh Lahavi Nahad Ita Biyuma by Cheni Chasru Chamisha Dvar. The second temple was missing 5 things. Harishon Mehem Hu Aaron, the Aaron, the ark was missing. Nignaz Bimei Yeshayahu Melech, the king Yeshayahu hid it away. L'chora mashma d'tam shechaser ha'aron b'beit shenihu mishum hita'ale min ha'ayin. We didn't want to for people to focus on that. Why? Ach lo kain mashma mesachet shkalim. So he quotes another Gemara, and he says, "Nira shuli shole Bavel shibana at Beit Sheni." These people who built that second temple, they knew something that we're not really paying attention to. Yadu kilo ze habinyan asher yamod bolamim. They knew that this temple, the second temple, would not be forever. Ve'ein chazartam la'eretz Yisrael b'tkufa zu geula hashlema, and they knew that they wouldn't be in Eretz Yisrael from that point on. It's a done deal. Datam haita ki binyan habayit b'tkufa hazot lo noed ela lehavin et ha'am b'tkufa hagalut ha'arucha. They knew that the Jewish people would eventually go into a longer galut, as we did. Al pi shuat hadin hayuhem tzrichen lishar b'chol od zeh zman rav. They knew it would take a long time. Elisherata hahashgacha shekvar la'achar shivim shana shel galud b'avel kvar nitma d'arev rov ha'am im hagoyim. Ubarur keshemesh haya ki hem yitachbu b'nei Yisrael b'galud me'od alfei shanim she'az vaday lo yitzliach ha'am lishar b'zhutei hamiyuchad v'shuv lo haya et milagoel l'chein chamal Hashem al amo v'otzim b'vavel l'chizram. So in other words, they knew that over time there's going to be a long galut, as there was, and they were preparing during that time for the Jewish survival through that galut. How do you survive through the galut? Well, for one thing, you don't focus on things that are going to be in Eretz Yisrael, because they're not going to be in Eretz Yisrael. They're going to be in America. They're going to be in Greenland. They're going to be in the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America or wherever they're going to be. All right? And they're not always going to be in the Holy Land. So they need to know how to survive not in the Holy Land. And how do you do that? By focusing on the Torah Shabbal Peh, the oral Torah. and the temporary nature of this temple, which by the way wasn't so temporary. It's 400, 410 years, 420 years. It's a long time, but but knowing that that was only going to be a short time, relatively speaking, so they emphasize speaking Aramaic because Aramaic is a foreign language, and we're going to have to speak foreign languages later on, etc. And and he says this answers a number of questions. I mean, a number of questions. This explains why the Jerusalem Talmud was written in Aramaic. This explains why the rabbis didn't object when the Hashmonaim, when the Maccabees took over the kingship, which they shouldn't have done. This answers a lot of things. In other words, the point is that in this Second Temple era, life was intentionally temporary. And the names of and back to our question, that's why they took on these names for the months, because these months also, in a sense, are going to be with us through exile, and they need to have exile names. They need to have their slave names, right? Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Shvat. Right? These are all Aramaic names. These are all Babylonian names, and we keep them in order to remember that we're not what we're supposed to be. This is temporary. The permanent life of living in Israel with Mashiach Tzidkenu, B'Meira V'Yameinu, all of that is coming up, God willing, soon. But when it happens, we'll be able to switch to not using Babylonian names and switch to not speaking Aramaic, Yiddish, Ladino, and all having Eretz Yisrael the way it should be. All right, couple more things. Sort of running out of time here, but this is a long piece also. But let's see if I can try to summarize. Right. Pesach time. We're going to be reading the Haggadah. And in the Haggadah, there's going to be a question asked by the Rasha, by the evil son. Right? He's going to see us eating the Korban Pesach. He's going to say, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe v'Aaron, Zod chukat ha-Pesach, kol ben necha lo yochel bo. Chapter 12, verse 43. Hashem tells Moshe and Aaron that we're going to eat the Korban Pesach. Nobody else is going to be able to eat it. So it's a mitzvah specifically for the Jews. And it's a chok. It's a statute. How is it a statute? Don't we have the idea that a chok means it's a mitzvah without explanation? And here it's pretty clear why we're doing it. We're fighting off avodah zarah. We're saying, so this thing that these Egyptians worship, the goat, the sheep, oh, it's for us. We can sacrifice it. It's for Hashem. It's not a holy thing by itself. So if that's the case, why is it being called a chok? It's called a chok here in the Torah, right? Chok hukat ha-Pesach. So so Rashi says that this is a hint to what we're going to say to the evil son, right? He's going to ask, Asa Hashem li v'lo lecha. Hashem did this for me and not for you. She'ilu haya Hashem lo haya nigal. If you would have been there, you wouldn't have been rescued. So how is this? What's the connection? How is this an answer to him? By him asking Maha avodah hazot lachem. So what his question is actually much deeper. He's actually asking a question that we should ask in a sense. And that is, why are we doing this? Why are we having the Korban Pesach? I understand why our ancestors did it. You know, the whole Korban Pesach, the animal has to be whole, has to be a sheep, has to be a certain age, but all the symbolism there. all of it fighting the avodah zarah of the people around us. I don't know if you know this, but we're not worried about that anymore. We don't have to fight off avodah zarah, right? There's not people worshiping sheep and goats all around us. Not that I know of. I didn't, I don't sneak into my neighbor's yard to see what they're doing over there, but I don't think they're worshiping idols. Certainly not sheep. So this Russia is asking the question, why are you doing this? What is this service for you? This service doesn't fit you. You're not doing avodah zarah. You're not scared of avodah zarah. You're not trying to fight off avodah zarah. And you know what you answer the son? You answer the son that we're not doing it because of what happened to our ancestors long ago. We're doing it because of who we are. Who are we? What do we stand for? Hashem did. It's not that Hashem gave us this mitzvah because He took us out. He took us out because He gave us this mitzvah. We have been given mitzvot to do, whether we understand them or not, whether it's a chok or not. We do a mitzvah because Hashem told us to do it, and by doing it, we connect and become closer to Him. This Russia, this son who's a Russia, who doesn't understand this concept, is under the false pretense in his head or her head that mitzvah observance is tied to our history. There have been people like that. There's probably still people like that who believe this way. And the answer is no. We don't just do mitzvot because our ancestors did it. So we're repeating what our ancestors did. That's not it. This is actually a very good word for Pesach time, for the Seder. Remind me to say this. Try to forget what I said, but remind me to say it. So, as often happens when you're learning Parshat Bo. All right, so the whole point of this mitzvah, says the Beit Halevi, is to remind us all that we do the mitzvot because Hashem tells us to, and that connects us to Him because we're following His order, not because it's going to rescue us or we're remembering how it rescued us. That's past. We're future focused, not past focused. Okay. Last piece. We're going to be maybe a little bit over time, and I apologize. One little thing towards the end of the parsha, and it's kind of on the same topic. Chapter 13, verse 8 tells us, tell your son on that day, saying, Bavur zeh asa Hashem li b'tzeiti mitzrayim. Because of this, Hashem did this to take us out of Mitzrayim. What do you mean because of this? It doesn't say because of what. Is it the mitzvah? Is it some other thing? What's the this? So he says you can answer al derech chok with a little humorous explanation. It says a man in Ish marries off his daughter. A good guy, it's a fancy wedding, beautiful flowers, etc., etc., and he gets a nice apartment. And, all the creature comforts of life are all there. Everything's good. His wife is very happy, and she tells her father how great he is, and the man's wife is happy that his daughter is happy. He tells his wife, listen, my dear, the problem is that the honeymoon is still going on. Wait till he has to settle himself, gets a job, and has to work for a living. Then let's see how it's going to be. The same thing is true with the mitzvot that the Jewish people received for Pesach. We didn't achieve our greatest spiritual heights by being taken out of Mitzrayim and by celebrating that first Pesach in Mitzrayim. No. We have not achieved our greatest goal yet at all. Much greater goal of receiving the Torah happened later on. And yet still, it's not... that wasn't the greatest. We messed up with the Egel HaZahav not too much after that, as the Meshech Chochmah points out. Right? So what does it mean, Ba'avur Zeh, for the sake of this, Hashem took me out of Egypt? It means, as the rabbis say in the Haggadah, the Baal Haggadah tells us, when matzah and maror are in front of us, not just the Pesach offering, but the matzah and the maror. So all of these things, not all these things. Sorry, not the Korban Pesach, the matzah and the maror. Why did the rabbis of the Haggadah leave out the matzah and the maror? Because we don't give the Korban Pesach anymore. Not ever since the temple was destroyed. The Baal Haggadah knew that, and based on that, in this life, without the greatness of the Beit HaMikdash, without the greatness of living under Mashiach, without all of that, we can still ba'avur zeh because of this, because of the same concept that Beit Halevi mentioned, of keeping the mitzvot, following the mitzvot, connecting to Hashem. That is what is the reason for the mitzvot that Hashem has given us. We have mitzvot, and again, I can't overemphasize this. This has basically been the theme of the night so far tonight. Right? The mitzvot that we have connect us to Hashem. Do we know how? Do we know why? No, not necessarily. That requires study, and there's different philosophies of figuring out what does this mitzvah mean, what does that mitzvah mean, what does the Arizal say about this mitzvah, what does the Michtav Me'Eliyahu tell us about the theme behind this mitzvah, the Rambam, the Ramban, Rabbeinu Hananel. Right? There's all kinds of different ways to look at the meaning behind the mitzvah. But the point is to do the mitzvah and connect to Hashem somehow, whether you understand how or not. Like I said, requires study. You can figure it out if you really wanted to. But don't think that we're doing the mitzvah because my grandmother did it, so I do it. No, that's the wrong attitude. Or the mitzvah is not relevant anymore because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash. No, okay, so there's mitzvah we don't have anymore. But the mitzvot that we still have, they still connect us to that chain of the Beit HaMikdash Hasheni that's going to lead, God willing, soon to the Beit HaMikdash Hashlishi, and then we'll see what all of these mitzvot are really about, and we'll feel them, I hope, a lot more. We won't have to ask these questions. What does it mean? Why are we doing it? Etc. All right. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Have a great rest of your night, and a good rest of your week, and Chodesh Tov. So
Thank
right now,
you for a good class, Rabbi.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please send them to the YouTube channel, the comments there. All right. Thank you very much.